Hey guys, it's Tara Marie. I wanted to do this video today because a couple weeks ago I posted on social media asking if you normally struggle with emotional eating or binge eating, are you having an extra hard time now with the circumstances of the pandemic? And the response that I got was fantastic and it was overwhelming, especially on Facebook. I got a lot of very detailed replies and it really helped me understand exactly where you are right now and how I could possibly help you. I want to read some of these comments. These are all from Facebook. I also got comments on Instagram, but these are all from Facebook. This is Rosanna. She said, I need to go back to work. The stress eating is killing me. And then she said, quarantine equals eating. Michelle on Facebook says, I'm definitely eating my feelings more with carbs and sweets, followed by partially diet-induced depression. I'm eating healthy food too, but things are out of balance. Karina said, it's a struggle, and it's not eating because you're bored. It's eating because you're anxious, nervous, and stressed out. The first 2 weeks I couldn't eat and I lost weight, which I usually struggle to do. Then as it all sunk in, the eating began and I've gained back what I lost and then some. Please post helpful information. Well, that's what I'd like to do today. As I was going through all of the comments and deciding what I wanted to talk about on the video, I decided before I do that video, I want to do this video, a preliminary video, talking in more general terms about emotional eating and binge eating, and a 4-step system that I created to help you reorient your relationship with food, to stop the negative self-destructive pattern of emotional eating and binge eating. And the way this all came about was, it came about from my own history with emotional eating and binge eating. Way back in the early part of my life, all through my teens and all through my 20s, and then just in my very early 30s, I was haunted with emotional eating and binge eating. And if you're really in the thick of it, you really understand what I'm talking about. It really dominated my life. I was always thinking about, when am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? What did I just eat? Oh crap, what should I do? Look at what I ate. What can I do to get rid of the calories? Maybe I should starve tomorrow. What should I do? What am I going to eat? It dominated my thoughts, it dominated my world, and it was a miserable way to live. And I finally decided in my early 30s, I'm going to break this pattern. And I didn't see a therapist. I just decided, I said, you know what? I can do this by myself. If I can figure out why I'm engaging in such a self-destructive pattern, I can stop it. I knew if I could figure out why I was doing it, I could stop it. And I've learned that that's really the answer to any negative or self-destructive pattern that you're doing in your life. If you can figure out why you're doing it, you have a high likelihood that you can be able to stop it, because then you can go back and unravel everything and you can reroute what you're doing. So the name of the system that I created is R.A.G.E, R.A.G.E. And if you listened to me when I was on SiriusXM, I talked about this, and I talked about it subsequently on my podcast. I did a podcast called Battle Binge Eating with R.A.G.E, and I walk you through the 4 steps. And if you like what you hear on this video, I would encourage you to download that podcast, because that podcast is a fully flushed out podcast. This is going to be a much shorter video than that podcast, and it'll give you additional information. And at the end of this video, I'll tell you where you can go to easily download that podcast. So after I was able to get through my own stresses with food, after I was able to reorient my relationship with food, I worked with my clients as a personal trainer, and I helped them do the same. And it wasn't until 2012 that I had a really tricky client. He was difficult in the sense that it was hard to get him to adhere to the idea of change. He is male, almost 500 pounds, and he was just completely engaged in daily patterns of emotional eating, compulsive eating, and binge eating. And it was at that point that I said, you know what, if I can put what I'm doing in like a little clean package, like steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it takes, it'll be more likely that he'll adhere to them, because he'll say, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And that's how this all came about. That's where R.A.G.E came from. So as I launch into it here, I want to start by getting one thing straight that's important that you understand. This was the biggest thing that I had to understand when I was breaking my patterns with food. When you emotionally eat, or when you binge eat, or when you're compulsively just stuffing your face, it really has nothing to do with food. You think you're doing it because you want the food. But in actuality, what you're seeking is to shift your emotional state. Really what you want. That's why you're emotionally eating or binge eating, because you're in an emotional state that's very uncomfortable and you want to shift your emotional state. So you're turning to food to do that. Somewhere along the line, you taught yourself that by eating certain things, it shifts your brain chemistry and it shifts your emotional state. And that's a very real thing. It does happen. But you have to understand that's why you're doing it. It's not because you want the food. It's because you want that feeling that you get when you eat the food. Because when you eat a lot of sugar and high carbohydrate junk food, which is what people use for emotional eating and binge eating, I've never had anybody binge on, broccoli and salmon. What are you eating? Frosting out of the can, cake, pie, cookies, raw cookie dough, bread, butter. That's what you're eating. It literally shifts your brain chemistry. The reward centers of your brain light up because dopamine is released. So the reward centers of your brain light up like a Christmas tree. And doctors have looked at functional MRI scans. The same part of your brain that light up when you eat sugar, it's exactly what an MRI scan looks like when a heroin addict uses heroin or a cocaine addict uses cocaine. It's a very real change in your brain. Also, serotonin levels go up. Serotonin is a mood stabilizer. So you're turning to food for a very specific physiologic reason and mission accomplished, but you have to ask yourself, is this a long-term coping mechanism that you can use that's going to actually be helpful and be beneficial? And you and I both know that that's not the case, because when I was engaged in emotional eating, all it did was add stress to my life. I was doing it usually to cope with anxiety. And when I stopped eating, all I had was my original problem. Plus now I had the problem was compounded because I just ate, half of a cheesecake, right? So it's not about the food. You're trying to shift your emotional state and get that feeling that you get with the food. So that's the number one thing that you have to understand before I even talk about anything else. Because as long as you're locked into believing that this is all about food, it's going to be hard for you to change. So let's talk about the 4 steps of R.A.G.E. Again, R.A.G.E. This is about being present in your life and putting awareness into your life. Because when you emotionally eat or binge eat, there's a mindless quality to it, right? Like, how many times have you eaten and then when you're done, you can't believe how much you ate, or you can't believe that you went through that entire bag of chips. You can't believe that you ate an entire cake. There's a lack of awareness. And if you bring your awareness to it, then we can go through the 4 steps and you can take control back into your life. So step 1 of R.A.G.E. is recognize. Recognize what you're doing. Before any binge or before you start to emotionally eat, there's always that moment in time where you know you're about to do it. At that moment, I want you to stop and do step 1. Recognize. Stop and say to yourself, okay, I recognize that I'm about to eat a cake because I want to change my emotional state. I recognize what I'm about to do. I don't feel good. I don't feel well on the inside. I'm feeling whatever I'm feeling, fill in the blank. I want to change my emotional state, and I'm going to eat in an effort to change my emotional state. Now, a lot of times when you're first starting out, the only step you'll do is that. You'll recognize what you're about to do, but then you'll carry on and you'll eat anyway. But you know what? I still say that's a win. And here's why I say that. Because at least you've gotten to the point where you're recognizing exactly what you're doing. So as I talk about these steps along the way, understand that you may not go, as of tomorrow, you may not go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You may just get to step 1 and then you may eat anyway. Or you may just get to step 2 and then eat anyway. Or you may just get to step 3 and then eat. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that you're making an effort. It's a concerted effort. And each day you're getting better and better at bringing an awareness to what you're doing. So again, step 1, you're about to emotionally eat, or a binge is about to begin. Stop. And R, recognize. Recognize and say out loud, I recognize that I'm about to eat for emotional reasons because I want to change my emotional state. Okay, that's step one. Step two, acknowledge. Step two is important. You have to acknowledge what's really going on emotionally. This is one of the most important steps, because if you don't do this effectively, you can't do the other two steps. Acknowledge what's really going on emotionally. Really stop, breathe, and say to yourself, you know what? I've got 3 kids at home and I have to homeschool them, and I'm trying to also work full-time from home, and we have 1 laptop and 1 tablet for the kids, and the 3 kids are fighting over it, and I can't do this anymore. I can't take it. I need to eat. Acknowledge that, right? Just acknowledge it. Or acknowledge, you know what? My husband and I are both working from home. We've never been stuck in close quarters for this much time, 24 hours a day. And we're fighting like cats and dogs, and I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. And so I'm going to eat. Acknowledge that. Acknowledge it. Or how about this one? You know what? I live alone and I'm stuck at home, and I'm lonely. I'm lonely and I need to eat to fill the void. I just have to do it. Acknowledge it. It's important that you acknowledge it, because it leads me to step 3. G, give. Give yourself what you really need. After you recognize that you're about to eat to change your emotional state, and you acknowledge what that emotional state is that you're trying to change, deep loneliness, deep frustration, anger, whatever it is, G, give yourself what you really need to help that emotional state. Let's go to the lonely one. Ask yourself, if you're lonely, is eating a cake the size of a hat box going to change your loneliness? I can tell you, because I've done it, no, it's not going to work. I've eaten because I was lonely, and it doesn't fix it. I've eaten because I was mad, glad, sad, angry, for what you name the emotion. I've done it. It doesn't fix anything. Ask yourself, I just had a fight with my husband for the 4th time today, and it's only 3 o'clock. Is eating going to fix that? Is it going to fix my anxiety or my frustration with my husband? No, it's not going to do it. Let's go to the first scenario. I've got 3 kids at home. 3 kids are fighting over 1 laptop and a tablet. I've got to homeschool them while I work full time. I can't take it anymore. My head's about to explode. Is eating going to fix that? No. So that's what you have to do. You have to give yourself what you really need. And usually for me, what I found was what I really needed was 2 things. I needed human connection with someone who understands, someone who I could talk to who would understand. And I needed to get my emotions out in the form of physical exercise, movement. I needed to move my body. Emotion literally means energy in motion. And for me, when I had like stuck emotions, like, bubbling up, I had to get them out. That was either if I'm, and it depends. If I'm anxious, I remember once I was really anxious and I went for a long jog down by the Hudson River. Something about the steady rhythmic pace of a jog by the water just calmed me down. If I'm angry, I need something more aggressive. I need to lift weights, or I need to do explosive exercise. I need to sprint. If I'm sad, sometimes I need something a little softer. I need to maybe do stretching or yoga poses. It depends on the emotion, what you need. But for me, it's always included movement. And then what also has helped me is making human connections. Because when I was emotionally eating, I was getting all my connection from food, as opposed to picking up a friend and saying, look, I'm really pissed off right now. Can you talk? Or I'm really feeling lonely right now, calling someone, talking to someone, emailing someone, texting someone, making a human connection is usually what you need. And give yourself what you need in the moment. I'm referring to that moment. I'm not saying if you go for a jog around the block and talk to a mom who can understand your problems, that's going to solve your problem of having 3 kids that you're homeschooling and you're working from home and you only have 1 tablet and 1 laptop. I'm not saying it's going to solve that, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to get you through that moment where you feel like you just can't take it anymore. Because the truth is, solving your problem with the homeschooling the 3 kids and you're having to work, that's going to take some more logistics and some more time. What I need to do is get you through that moment where you want to eat a cake and divert you away from eating a cake. Trust me, it'll be much more beneficial to you if you run around the block, for 5 minutes and then talk to another mom who understands what you're going through. Does that make sense? And listen, I understand if you can't go outside and run around the block, run up and down the stairs in your house or go into a room and run in place for 5 minutes. Just get it out. Get the emotion out of your body. Step 4 is E, examine your life for triggers. When I was eating for emotional reasons or binge eating, it was always a trigger that started it, that set me off, right? Because emotional eating and binge eating, at least in my experience with myself and every client I've ever had, it's a pattern. It's not something that you do once or twice or occasionally. It's a pattern of behavior, a coping mechanism that you've it's a faulty coping mechanism that you're doing, but it's a pattern, and people are triggered by certain things. I had a client once who worked with, it was a family business, and he worked directly with his brother, and it was his big brother, and his brother would pick on him, and he would get really upset. And instead of talking to his brother or confronting the situation directly, he would just stuff his emotions down and eat. You see, emotions are meant to be validated, moved through your body, and released, not stuffed down with food. Because if you stuff emotions down with food, they're not going anywhere. They're just getting stuffed down. So that was his trigger. I know a guy who he would eat out of loneliness. I was helping him examine his life for triggers. He told me that, he does fine all day during the day, but when he gets home, he was divorced and his kids were grown and moved out of the house. His house was just dark and really quiet, and he would become deeply lonely, and he would just start eating, and he would eat for the rest of the night from like 6 o'clock until he went to bed at midnight. And it was a nightmare. He put on a lot of weight. So when we examined his life for triggers, I said, aha, that's a trigger. We're going to examine your life for triggers, and then you have to create a plan for that when that trigger comes again. So the plan that I created for him was, I said, okay, instead of going home from work and sitting in a dark, lonely house, why don't we have you bring your gym clothes to work, and straight from work, go to your gym. And I want you to get involved in an evening workout class, a group fitness class, because I know from when I was a group fitness instructor, usually it's the same people that go on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, and everybody becomes friendly with one another. I wanted him to go to the gym and get involved in a class where he was part of a group, because again, part of his problem was loneliness. I didn't want him to go to the gym and work out alone. I wanted him to be a part of the group. So step 4 is E, examine your life for triggers, and then create a plan, have a plan in place for when that trigger happens the next time. The triggers are always going to be there. This is what I've learned after overcoming my struggle with food. Nothing happened to the triggers. My life is not that different. I still have the same triggers, the same emotions, and the same feelings inside. What I've learned to do, though, is instead of relying on food to cope, I've used other coping mechanisms that are actually more effective, and they don't create stress in my life. Believe me, if I'm stressed out, eating a cake is going to add stress to my life versus if I go for a run in the park and then talk to one of my girlfriends. Do you know what I mean? So the triggers are always going to be there. So part of that last part, examine your life for triggers, is having a plan in place so that when that trigger returns, you know what you're going to do instead of eat. So, and I wanted to say this. Keep in mind, for a lot of people, and this was true for me, food could be a trigger. Like food could be a trigger. If I was in an environment where I was around enticing food, it would trigger me. So keep in mind that triggers aren't just loneliness, frustration, anger, whatever, mad, glad, sad, all that. Food can also be a trigger. It definitely was for me. And for that, I had to learn I'm not going to put myself in a position where I'm around food like that. And then what I decided was to totally abstain from sugar. So I just stopped eating sugar to make my life easier. So let's review the steps again. R.A.G.E. One is R, recognize what you're about to do, bring awareness to the situation so you're aware of what you're doing. A, acknowledge what you're really feeling emotionally because you're eating to change your emotional state. So acknowledge what's really going on inside of you emotionally. G, give yourself what you really need in that moment. And I'm telling you, what I always needed was human connection with another person who could understand, who I could just release my feelings to, and also a physical release. And then E, examine your life for triggers and have a plan in place for when that trigger comes back. Because again, the triggers probably aren't going anywhere. You're just gonna have to come up with a different coping mechanism. So that is R.A.G.E. And I wanna say this, if you are listening to this and you're saying, yeah, who am I going to call? I just moved to this area. I don't know who to call. I have, if you're in a position where you don't have anybody that you can easily or readily call, or these things are happening in the middle of the night and you can't just call somebody. I did something. I Googled free mental health services NYC just to see what would come up here in New York City. This is where I live. And lo and behold, I found a service called NYC Well, and it's free confidential support and crisis intervention for anybody seeking help for mental health issues. And that's an example of anybody, we can all call somebody, because I would hope in your city there's a service like this. And the way you can find out is just Google free mental health services and then the name of your city. Because there's likely, especially now in this time during the pandemic, there is some group that's offering free mental health support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to help you talk things through. And by the way, I called this service just to find out really what they're offering, and NYC Well, and they told me two things. They told me that one of the things they do is if you call and you're a New York City resident, they can refer you to ongoing free or low-cost help, mental health help. But they also told me that if someone from outside of New York City calls, they don't turn anybody away. The only reason it's particular to New York City is for the referral program. But if you live in another state and you call NYC Well, they're not going to turn you away. I talked to a really nice lady and I asked her what the program consists of. So I want to give you this phone number. The phone number for NYC Well, and it's a service that's offered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, totally for free. It's 1-888-692-9355. That's 1-888-692-9355, and that's NYC Well. But what I would do if I were you is, again, go to your computer and just Google free mental health services and then the name of your city. There's probably something local to your city. Another thing you might want to consider, and this has helped a couple of my clients, is if you really struggle with food, Overeaters Anonymous is a great resource. Overeaters Anonymous. Now they're probably, when my clients would go, they would go to physical meetings in the neighborhood, in the area, because there are meetings all the time, every day. So you can attend meetings like Alcoholics Anonymous. But now they're obviously probably happening all online, so it makes it even easier for you. You can plug into a meeting. So just Google Overeaters Anonymous and see if you can get plugged into a group there, because I know that my clients, the two clients that I had that did it, really enjoyed it. They enjoyed the camaraderie and the support. And again, you can always have somebody to call. See, that's the key to surviving emotional issues, is always having somebody that you can call. So that's Overeaters Anonymous. And I feel like I have to say this, it saddens me to say this, but obviously the suicide rate has skyrocketed with the shutdown. It's so sad. But if you are really in a bad way and you need help, serious help immediately, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That number is 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. If you're really struggling, don't ever struggle alone, because there's always somebody who can help you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's completely free and completely confidential. I want to tell you, if you want to hear more about R.A.G.E, and I encourage you to listen to the podcast because, like I said, it was a fully fleshed out show. There are two ways you can get it. The quick way you can get it is go to my website, taramarie.com, and click on any link that says Listen to Tara Marie Live. There's one on the home page. Click on that link. It'll take you to the page with all of the Tara Marie Live episodes, and you can either search for R.A.G.E, and it'll come up, or you can scroll to episode 17, and that episode is called Battle Binge Eating with R.A.G.E. The other thing you can do is go to iTunes or Google Play or whichever podcast app you use and search for my show, Tara Marie Live. And when you're there, you'll see all the shows listed. It's episode 17, Battle Binge Eating with R.A.G.E. And while you're there, I would encourage you to hit subscribe. Subscribe to my podcast. Right now, I'm not producing new material because I'm focusing on other projects. But when we come back to production, if you're subscribed, new episodes will drop directly into your podcast feed, okay? I do want to leave you with this thought. And this is one of the most important things I want to say. I want to say that there is hope and there is help. I was one of the worst cases I've ever seen with binge eating and emotional eating, and I was able to help myself and turn everything around. And now my whole relationship with food is just a completely different relationship with food. Now I eat food either because I'm hungry or because I need to fuel up before a workout or post-workout. I view food now as a way to give nutrition to my cells. That's it. Whereas I used to be the total opposite end of the spectrum. It was really messed up. If I can get over it, you can get over it, I promise you. So there is hope and there is help. And you can change. You can change. You can change your whole life for the better. The power to change is already within you. The key is you have to be really ready to change. And part of being ready to change is being willing to do all of the work involved. That's the catch. You have to do all the work involved, right? Because if you want to change your life, you have to change yourself first. Primarily in this case, you're going to have to change about what you think about yourself, what you think about food, how you think about the world around you, how you think about stress. You're going to have to change how you relate to food. You're going to have to completely reorient your relationship to food, and that's really hard to do because for a lot of people, you may be in the position, one of my clients, actually two clients that I can think of, they had literally replaced human relationships with their relationship with food. Like they were pretty cut off from other people because they were too busy with their relationship with food. Food became their friend, their comforter, their boyfriend, their girlfriend. It was really all encompassing. You're gonna have to change all of that because you can't rely on food for comfort if you're gonna break this cycle, okay? But it can be done. And again, it all starts with you. Try these steps. Try the steps of R.A.G.E. Let me know how it goes. Remember, it's not just a success-only path. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. But I tell everybody this, when you have a bad day, when you screw up, it's okay. Hit the reset button. Don't wait till tomorrow to start over. Don't wait till Monday to start over. Don't wait till the beginning of the month. Don't wait till the beginning of the year. Hit the reset button and start over right now. Get right back up on the horse. Because the nature of success is that instead of being a straight line to success, it's more like a zigzag line, okay? You will get there. Keep working the steps of R.A.G.E. I'd love to know your comments and hear if this is helpful information. And on the next video, I'll address the more specific comments that came up on social media when I asked the question in the first place. I appreciate all of the feedback, and I'll see you next time.